In this video, I will illustrate to you the information that's needed for each term loan that the farm business might have. So it's important to realize that if a farm had several different term loans, which would be loans for machinery, equipment, land, and so forth, they would need this information, or this table that I'm going to illustrate would be needed for each one of those loans. In a previous video, you learned how to compute the payment, the principal, and the interest in each of the term loans. So we will assume in this one that you know how to do that, and then we will go forward and explain to you the concepts of loan balance and accrued interest. You understand the concept of accrued interest again from a previous video, but then in this one we'll show you how it actually is used in providing information that will eventually flow into the financial statements. When you have a term loan, you actually create a table that looks like this table right here. And that table, in financial terms, is referred to as an amortization table or an amortization schedule. So you would need an amortization schedule for every one of the term loans. So if a farm business had a couple of machinery loans, maybe a land loan, you would have to have one of these amortization schedules. So let's run through and show you how it works. For this one, we're going to assume a 5-year term. We're going to assume a 6% interest rate, and we're going to assume a $45,000 amount borrowed. Now, because we've set this up as a template, you could change those numbers, and then it would automatically change what's in the amortization schedule. We're going to assume this loan was taken out on July 1st, 2012, and to keep it simple, we're going to assume annual payments. So you'll notice on the date right here, to the first row is 2012, that's the year of the loan, and then the payments will be at the anniversary of that loan. In other words, 1 year later for 5 years. So we'll actually start making payments in 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Okay, now I included a column for payment number, and you'll understand why, because I need that payment number when I use the Excel formulas to calculate principal and interest. Sometimes I have people ask me, well, why do you put the original date in? Because you don't have any payment due, but I think you'll understand that shortly. Okay, so you borrow this money July 1st. July 1st, you don't have 2012, excuse me. You don't have a payment actually due until July 1st, 2013. But when you come to December 31st of 2012, you would have some accrued interest. In other words, once that that loan was taken out July 1st, July 2nd interest began to accrue, and it would accrue until December 31st in 2012. So what happens is, in December 31st, you would have some accrued interest. Now, since I made the loan July 1, that's half a year, just to keep the arithmetic simple. So how much would that accrued interest be right here in December 31st of 2012? Well, it would be 1/2 of the interest that would be due the next year. Because you know in July 1st, 2013, this is how much interest will be due, that $2,700. You know from July to December is half a year, so actually in December, 1/2 of that is what that would be due. I'm gonna do away with the decimals here and let everything be rounded. So you have a $1,350 accrued interest that would be accrued as of December 31st, 2012. It's not that it doesn't mean it has to be paid, but if you were to walk in and say, okay, I'm going to pay this loan off right now, you would owe that $1,350. And the idea of the December 31st on these financial statements is what is the actual condition of the business at that particular date. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to remind you that this is December 31st of each year. Okay? So we'll put that over, and we'll center that over these three columns so that you'll know that these numbers represent what's going on December 31st of that year. Okay, when you get to July 1st of 2013, you got a payment of $10,683, of which $79.83 is principal and 2,700 is interest. So at the end of 2013, what do you owe on that loan? Well, this loan balance right here is simply equal to the original amount borrowed minus the principal. Okay? And that's where that 37,000. Now in the next year, your loan balance would be equal to the 37,000 balance in 2013 minus the principal of the next year. And then when you grab that and pull it down, you know that when you finish it, you will have a zero loan balance. You've paid the loan off. Okay, as of December 31st, the accrued interest each year is simply one half of the amount of interest that'll be due the next year. So right here, that $1,111, that's one half of the interest that'll be due the next July. A very common mistake by my students over the years is they want to take one half of this number in the same row or in the same year. But if you stop and think logically, that can't be. That 2,700's already been paid. Okay? That's not an accrued interest. That's a paid interest. You wrote a check for that amount. So this accrued interest is actually what has accrued on that loan balance from the date of that payment, July 1, until the end of the year. Okay? All right. In other words, when you made that payment July of 2013, your loan balance was then $37,017. Well, July 2nd, that began to accrue interest, and it would accrue interest until July 1st of 2014, which would be $2,221. But back as of December 31st, 2013, only half of that interest has actually accrued. Now remember, I'm just using the half a years as to show you the arithmetic. You would have to actually prorate that for when the loan was actually taken out and what portion of a year that would be. Okay, if you take that formula, which the formula would simply be for the accrued interest, it'd be equal to the next year's interest times 0.5, and then of course you can take that and drag that down, and you get the accrued interest each year. Okay, one final thing that's needed, it will be needed in the financial statements, is the change in accrued interest. In other words, how much does it change from year to year? Well, in 2012, that accrued interest went from 0 to 1350 on that loan because you didn't even have the loan before 2012. So the change in accrued interest is the 1350. But the next year, the accrued interest is at 1,111. So to get the change here, what you would do is simply take the 2013 accrued interest and subtract the 2012 accrued interest, and that would be your change, and then you can grab that and pull it down. These numbers are negative for the simple reason that the interest is being paid each year on a loan balance that is decreasing. So the amount of accrued interest each year is actually decreasing. You can come to the end of each of the columns and put totals, and what they will tell you is how much total amounts you've paid, how much principal you pay, and how much interest you pay over the life of the loan. You know the principal's got to be the original, equal to the original amount borrowed. I mean, that's how much you pay back. The total interest is the total rent you paid on the amount of money borrowed. And of course, if you add those two together, that's the total amount that you're going to pay back on this loan. What you should do now for class purposes is you should build you a template, very much like I have built right here, and have it where it will put in any amount borrowed, any interest rate, and any date. Okay? Now, we will stay with 5-year loans, 5-year term loans for our class purposes. So you can build a template for 5 years, but you want to be sure that you can change these dates. Now, the way I did it here was simple. I put 2012 here, and then I just went, when I got right here, I just said equals. I just typed in just like this. I went equals, went back and clicked on the 2012. And then what I did is simply added one. Right in this cell, I went equal to the previous year simply plus 1. There's other ways you can do that. And then I grabbed that cell and drug it down through the 5 years. Once you have built a template for a 5-year loan like this, then I want you to sit down and build one for a 30-year loan. Again, with we could make annual payments, and again, we'll assume the date is July 1. We're just trying to keep the arithmetic fairly easy. But I want you to build a 30-year template, which would be reflective of a land mortgage. So for purposes of the next exam, you will have questions over a 5-year loan. And what I will do is I'll give you a loan amount and an interest rate and a date. The date will be July 1, but I'll give you a date for different years. So I might be 2010, might be 2012, 11, 13, 14, or whatever. Okay? And then I'll do the same thing for the 30-year loan. I'll give you a loan amount and interest rate. The term will be 30 years, and I'll give you a date as of July 1st.